Hi, my name is James White. I'm a real estate agent with 3DX. And today, I just wanted to go over the exclusive buyer agency contract with you because it's a requirement that a contract be signed before we show houses now. As of August 17th, 2024, the rules changed, the law changed, and now it's a requirement. It was always supposed to be, but now we have to have it because we need to know that we're getting paid for the job. And if we don't have this signed and we show a property, then it puts us at risk of either not getting paid or an ethics violation. Typically, sellers still pay pay for the commission most of the time, but it's up to us to call ahead of time and find out if that's the case. If not, then the commission will fall back on the buyer. It's actually the buyer's responsibility, but when the seller is paying for it, then the buyer is relieved of that obligation. So, I just wanted to go over the contract with you right quick so that you will understand exactly what it is. It's nothing for a buyer really to be concerned about. It's actually more of an obligation to the agent because the agent is the one that has to use his expertise and knowledge on behalf of the client. The only thing that the client has to do is understand that you have one agent, the one agent that you sign a contract with. That's why agents are pretty much required to ask you two questions when you meet them. One, have you already been pre-approved? But the first question is, are you already working with an agent? Because if you're in a contract and you work with another agent, then the agent that you're under contract with might be entitled to the commission if the other agent helps you buy a property. So you don't want to put anybody in a situation where they could end up in court about commission. So I just wanted to go over this with you so that you would understand exactly what it means. So this is the Michigan Realtors version, but there are several different versions of the same contract. It's exclusive buyer agency contract, and this is for designated agents. That's what I am, a designated agent. You might be working with someone in the office that's traditional, and you might have multiple agents that's working for you in that office. But in the typical sense, you're gonna just have one. So the contract, first of all, starts with the date. And the date expires. There's an expiration date and a start date. That's important. Generally, if you're going to get in a contract with an agent, they are pretty much trained to make it make sense for them. You want to make it to where you're not just showing a house or two and then the client goes off and buys something with somebody else. So generally it's 90 days, maybe 6 months. 6 months is pretty typical, and some agents go for a whole year. I don't go for a whole year. Most of the time, I'm going to show 2 or 3 houses, and then we can go back and renegotiate. Because after the second time, I'm going to show probably 10 or 15 houses, and when it start getting up in the 20 plus houses, then I'm going to need a deposit personally. But we're going to go over this contract step by step, and you'll see exactly where I'm going with this. So, the exclusive buyer agency contract, designated agency. Contract date through expiration date. It's going to have the brokerage firm, the designated agent's name, the designated agent's email address, phone number, the supervisory broker, because every real estate agent who is not a broker has to have a broker to hold the license. So we're going to have brokers, and then it's going to have the buyer's name, address, email address, and phone number. Scope of exclusive agency. Broker and buyer agree that broker shall act as a buyer's exclusive agent in connection with the buyer's possible purchase of the following property type. And that property type is either going to be all real estate property and located in Michigan, or it might be a specific property, which is what I do at first. So if somebody comes to me and says they want to see 2 or 3 houses, then I'll make the contract out for the 1, 2, 3 houses for that day. That way, I can get acquainted with the buyer and the buyer can get acquainted with me. And we won't need a release after we see these specific properties. The release is more work for me, and I would rather not be locked in with somebody right up front because I know what I have to offer and I know how I'm going to hold to my standards. And I don't want to be locked in with somebody that's just going to have me running and doing a bunch of nonsense because they just can because I'm locked into a contract. If I'm going to be in a contract relationship like that, then an agency relationship is what it's called. I need a deposit and I'm going to need compensation per hour because sometimes people can take up a lot of time. And I mean a lot of time. And if you go to work, you're going to be expecting to get paid about an hour. And at the same time, the bills are going to be due at the same time every month. So you can't exhaust all your time and energy and resources in helping somebody that is not going to pay off by the end of the month, if that's the case. So, number 2, designated agency. This is where it comes down to exactly what is required of the buyer. Broker and buyer herein designate the agents named above as the buyer's designated agent. Buyer shall have an agency relationship with only broker and the designated agent and supervisory broker named above. Buyer acknowledges that neither designated agent nor supervisory broker named herein are acting as an attorney, tax advisors, surveyors, appraisers, environmental experts, or structural or mechanical engineers, and that buyers should contact professionals on these matters. Neither designated agent nor supervisory broker is in a position to advise a buyer as to the location of any property within a floodplain or as to a floodplain insurance requirements. Buyers is encouraged to visit the http://www.floodsmart.com and or consult with appropriate professionals. It's obvious agents are salespeople. We're not licensed to be contractors or anything like that. And that's why it's good to have an agent who knows how to find resources like that and maybe has someone on hand for situations like those. However, it's not our responsibility. It's up to the buyer to do their own due diligence to find out these things. Number 3, exclusive agent. Buyer agrees that during the term of this agreement, any and all inquiries and or negotiations on behalf of buyer relating to the acquisition of any desired property shall be through designated agent. That means that you have one agent. You don't call other agents to find out what's going on. I mean, you might have a friend and you want to check and see, did your agent do something right or wrong, or, but at the end of the day, that's why it's important that you might want to interview 2 or 3 different agents before you decide to sign with one. It's very important that this is a contract. It's not just something to take lightly because you can end up in court, in the court of law, behind these contracts. But it's pretty simple. If you get somebody that you're comfortable with, that you trust, that knows what they're doing, you might not want to get somebody, ask them how long they've been doing it. Ask them about some of their experiences. Ask them how they plan on helping you. No agents are the same. You might get somebody who is trained by somebody else that operates in a similar fashion, but it's going to be somebody that knows something about one thing and less about something else that somebody else knows more about. So get somebody that's going to suit your particular needs because that is going to be your agent. Number 4, compensation of broker. Brokerage firms' requirements for services rendered is not set by law and is fully negotiable. And you have to know that. People would throw numbers out there and they'll say, this is what I do it for. But if you just don't feel comfortable with what the fee is, which typically is 3%. If you're a buyer and you sign a contract with a real estate agent, they're typically going to put 3% in the contract. Personally, if I find a property and I find out that the seller is only paying 2.5%, I won't go back to my buyer and say, hey, I need the other 0.5%, which is perfectly legal. But I don't normally do that. Sometimes I have clients to say, hey, you know what, I think you should get paid what you're supposed to get paid, and we're not going to fuss about it. But even then, I always say, hey, don't worry about it. I put an addendum together, change the 3% to 2.5%, and call it a day. Because when it comes down to it, they say, oh, it's paperwork. It is paperwork, but it's contracts. It's not just paperwork. It's contracts and addendums and all kind of documentations that need to be filed to stay in compliance with the law. That's why there's always a compliance fee for the brokerages, because brokerages are required to keep track of all transactions, and 3DX keeps track of all transactions, and they need all of their forms signed. So it's not as simple when you say you want something done. It's just done like that. It's a process, and there are forms that need to be filed and contracts and addendums that need to be filled out and signed in order for your request to be granted. I go back and work things out for people all the time, but they don't realize there's actually so much more work for me to go changing things that they already agreed to from the beginning. But I go ahead and change things to make it easy on my clients. So, broker may not receive compensation for brokerage services provided to buyer from any source that exceeds the amount agreed upon herein or in a subsequent written agreement between broker and buyer. In consideration of these services to be formed under the agreement, buyers agree to pay brokerage as follows. Now, before I go through that, what this is saying is, say for instance, I put 2.5% on here. And then I call and find out that the seller is paying 3%. And I'm stuck at 2.5%. I can't even take the 3%, but I can put an addendum together to change it. And I can change it to the 3%, and that way the buyer is still good and I'm still good, and I can accept the 3% at that point. But right offhand, you can't accept more than what you put in the contract. And that's why you're always going to see 3% on the buyer agency contract, because it'll be easier for me to go down than to go back up for no reason, because it's typically 3% is the compensation that a buyer's agent receives. Just like on the seller side, typically it's 3%, which is why listings typically pay 6%. 3 for the buyer's brokerage and 3 for the listing brokerage. So the different ways that we can be compensated are retainer fee, hourly fee, flat fee, and commission. Generally, the retainer fee, and I tell people about a retainer a lot, and as I have to make sure that my expenses are covered, but a lot of people don't like to hear the word retainer fee. But I don't understand what's the big problem, because if a person wants a pair of Jordans or a person wants to put a car on hold, then they put a deposit down. And in the case of a store, they just holding a pair of shoes. Just like with the car, they just holding the car. But with the real estate agent, the minute that you start asking questions, then you're using the expertise of the real estate agent, the knowledge of the real estate agent. The minute that you want research done, then the agent is using their MLS and other tools that they have to pay for in order to be able to get this information for you. The minute that you decide to go see a property, the agent has to use a vehicle to get to the property. It's not just costing gas. There's operating expenses, including the price of the car. If you have a car note, if you have insurance, which you have to, if you have to fix the brakes, and I've had to fix brakes, I had to fix the radiator, I had to fix the transmission. These are normal expenses that are required just to operate a vehicle. And where a person won't mind putting down a deposit for a pair of shoes, or even for a car, or anything they want to do. If they want a tattoo, they're gonna put a deposit down. But a property, a house, is typically the largest purchase that a person is gonna buy, and they have a problem with putting a down payment down, and that's fine, because when it comes down to it, like what I do, I'll show a few houses, get a feel for the client. If I'm not feeling it, then I won't go anymore. If they're not feeling it, they're not locked in to anything. I try to be as liberal as possible. But once you get me going, and I'm showing you 20 houses or better, then it's time to start deducting per hour. We'll get to the hourly fee second, but I need you to understand this one part about the retainer fee. Buyer will pay broker a non-refundable retainer fee of blank. $500 to me is quite reasonable. Due and payable upon execution of this agreement. So if you give me $500 and sign this, then we're good with the retainer fee. But this is the good part for you. The retainer fee shall be applied against any commission owed to broker. So, at the end of the transaction, when the seller is paying the commission, and the commission is 3%, and it's 3% in the buyer agency contract, then there's an outstanding $500 in my case, or whatever the retainer fee is. That $500 goes right back to the buyer. So it's not a loss. Now, in the case of the hourly fee, that's where we start deducting from the retainer fee, because the retainer fee is just sitting there. But what I do is I say, okay, you get 20 houses before I start deducting. Now, who needs to see 20 houses? Nobody, really. Not if the agent is effective. Not if the agent is doing his due diligence. Not if the client is being realistic about the market. Before I show a house, before I even reach out to the agent to find out if they have offers or if they're paying the commission, I look up the seller's disclosure statement. So if the property has any issues that might be of concern, then we can just skip that. We don't even need to go see it. So that keeps our showings down, and that makes what we go see actually matter. And who needs to see 20 houses to decide which house they want? Now, if you do need 20 houses, you have to take into consideration that this agent is a person and they have a life too. they have bills and expenses. And at 20 houses, you spent plenty of gas. You kept them at the gas pump. You probably working on an oil change right now. You got tires rotated, maybe even some new tires that's warranted. There's a lot going on after you've seen 20 houses. Now, I know people that have knocked 20 houses out in 3 days, and I've done it. I showed somebody 96 houses, and he didn't even buy one. So where did that leave me? The brokers is not reimbursing me and nobody else. Nobody's being reimbursed for the time. Nobody's being paid otherwise. We're independent contractors, and we get paid when we close. And otherwise, we don't get paid. So it's only fair for the person who wants to see or wants to use the agent and get the good results and wants to find out the information and see the properties and go here and there, that they pay for their own endeavors. Just like you pay if you want to go bowling. Just like if you want to just go to anywhere. You basically have to pay if you want to go to the park. If you want to go fishing, you got to get a license, and it's going to cost. So the hourly fee. Buyer will pay broker an hourly fee of blank for services performed under this agreement, due and payable upon receipt of invoice from broker. So with the retainer fee is already with the brokerage. The retainer fee doesn't go in my pocket. The retainer fee goes to the brokerage. And once the brokerage has it, now it's on record. It's non-refundable, so it's not going back. But it is going back as a credit at closing when the buyer buys. Now, upon receipt of invoice. So it's record keeping that needs to happen in order for you to see the hourly fee being deducted. So I save $50 an hour at this particular time. So with $500, that gives a person 10 hours. Now, that hour may be broken down into showings and plus research, plus writing an offer, or 2 or 10. But however it is, the time that it takes to do it is pretty much what the deductions would be for, and you'll see them on the invoice, and you'll understand where the deductions came from, because you may have used up 10 hours, and out of the 10 hours, that's $500. If you only use up 5 hours, then you're only halfway there, $250. So then you will still have that $250 credited at closing. And that doesn't have to be just only like concessions. Concessions from the buyer can only go towards your closing costs. But this deposit credit can go towards anything, including your down payment. I just actually had a guy who closed with $500. He could have just gotten his $500 right there for his closing. Only thing is he had already paid his deposit, his EMD, the earnest money deposit. So that wouldn't have probably worked out that way because he won't get the actual money back. But you can use it to buy your interest rate down or whatever. You can even, if you can't do anything else with it, then you get a warranty, a home warranty. You can get a home warranty with it. I try to make everything fair for everybody. Actually, I'm gonna make it more fair for my clients than to make it for myself. So the hourly fee shall be applied against any commission owed to broker. And that's what I just explained. The flat fee. In the event buyer contracts to purchase the desired property, buyer will pay broker a flat fee equal to blank. The flat fee is due and payable upon closing, provided, however, that if the transaction does not close because of any default on the part of the buyer, the flat fee shall become immediately due and payable. The flat fee obligation shall apply to any purchases agreements executed during the term of this agreement or during the extension of this agreement. The flat fee obligation will also apply to purchase agreements executed within blank months after the expiration or other termination of this agreement if the property acquired was presented to buyer during the term of this agreement. That means that if we don't finish and the expiration of this agreement happens, then we still get compensated for what we did during the terms of this agreement. Now, what everybody knows and everybody makes a big deal about is the commission. It's not what you think it is. First of all, like I said, we have operating expenses. So when you see the number on the paper, that's not all profit, because you have to take into consideration how much we've actually spent, the time we spent, and what was actually done for you. Just because we're not at the machine next to you at work, just because we're not out in the street with the construction crew with a shovel and a hard hat, that doesn't mean we're not working. This is what we're licensed to do. We have to keep everything in compliance with the laws of the state, and we're the ones that know. We're the ones that will be held liable if there's any violations taking place. This is work, and it takes time and expertise to be able to conduct the transactions, depending on what type of transaction you're actually in the middle of or you're working on. But you are the principal. You are asking for something to be done, and you're expecting for us to do it. If I was cutting hair, I would have the same license from Lyra, and you would be expecting to pay at least $50 an hour. At least. It might be $100 an hour for your barber now. And if that's not to say women's hair or hairdos, that's even more. You'd be okay with paying somebody to cut your hair, but you don't want to pay a real estate agent to use their profession. That's what their profession is, to conduct a search, help you find, go see, and close you, and get you into a house. Commission. In the event buyer contracts to purchase the desired property, buyer will pay broker a fee equal to blank dollars or a commission equal to blank percent of the purchase price. Normally, it's the commission is the percentage. But sometimes, especially for cheaper properties, an agent might just require a certain dollar amount. I had a house not too long ago. If I would have sold the house, my commission would have been less than $1,000. But I can't work for less than $1,000. I need at least a couple of $1,000. So if I say, okay, I'll sell this house for $30,000, and the percentage is not going to be 3%, so I can come out with $900 to split with the brokerage, especially if it took some time to find that house, because I still had to deduct the expenses that it took me to make the $900. I've actually done that, and it doesn't make sense. I drive all over the place, and it costs and it takes time, and when I come back and I end up making $200 or $300 profit, and I spent way more time than that, and I spent that much in gas and everything else, that's not fair to me, and I don't have to take it. I'm an independent contractor, and I can do what I can do, and it has to make sense to me too. But I want it to make sense for you. So the commission is due and payable upon closing, provided, however, that if the transaction does not close because of any default on the part of the buyer, the commission shall become immediately due and payable. The commission obligation shall apply to any purchase agreements executed during the term of this agreement or during any extension of this agreement. The commission obligation will also apply to purchase agreements executed within blank months after the expiration, which I always I always put 3 months. I'm not gonna just try to keep you locked in for a long time or anything. But if it's something that I showed you and then 2 months later you go back and double back and get it, then I'm entitled to the commission because I'm procuring cause of the sale. You saw it when you were with me. I took you to see it. We went through it. And like I said, back up here, that the designated agent is not a tax advisor, surveyor, appraiser, environmental expert, structural or mechanical engineer, that the buyer should contact a professional for those things. Of course, I'm not. However, when I go in a house, I'm not just opening the door and letting you walk through. I'm going to walk through with you. In the first place, I particularly want to go is the basement. So when I go in the basement, I take my flashlight and I'm checking. I want to see if there's any cracks in the floor. And I'm not a structural engineer. I know a little bit about construction, but my purpose is to keep you from paying for an inspection just to have to back out and be at square one again, looking for another house and paying for another inspection when you finally find another house. I don't want that. So I'm trying to keep you from doing that. So if I do show you a property and we pretty much got the details ironed out and you decide to go back and get it later, I've earned my compensation. So you might as well just call me back to see it rather than calling and getting on Zillow or Realtor or wherever to go see it. Compensation credit. Buyer will receive a credit against any amount owed pursuant to paragraph 4 above for the compensation paid to broker by the seller or the seller's listing broker. Right. That's what I talked about before as far as receiving the credit back if you get the seller's paying it. That's great. I mean, you're not losing anything by submitting a deposit. As long as you buy something, then you get it back. If you don't buy something, then you pay for the service of going to see everything and doing everything that you did or having the agent do everything that the agent did on your behalf at your request. Conflict of interest. Buyers. Buyer acknowledges and agrees that designated agent may show more than one buyer the same property and may prepare offers for the same property for more than one buyer. Designated agent shall preserve any confidential information disclosed by a buyer client and shall not disclose the existence of or other terms any offer prepared on behalf of one buyer to another buyer. In the event designated agent works for two competing buyer clients in connection with any specific property, designated agent will be working equally for both buyer clients and without the full range of fiduciary duties owed by a buyer's agent to a buyer. In this situation, the competing buyer clients are giving up their right to undivided loyalty and will be owed only limited duties of disclosure, obedience, and confidentiality. So, if I have another buyer and you want to see the same property, you want to submit an offer on the same property, then it kind of diminishes my obligation to you just a little bit. I can't tell you about the other client, and I can't tell the other client about you and what your offer is either. It just has to be up to you at that point to decide what you want to offer and if that's going to work for you. Highest and best. Do your best to get it. How much is it worth to you? And see if you can get it over the other client. But otherwise, that happens, but it's rare. It's rare. Let's see. I'm just run through here real quick. Conflict of interest. This is basically saying that now if I list a property or any agent has a listing and you decide that you want this property, personally, I don't do dual agency. And the seller is my client. I can't do dual agency because I can't be loyal to two sides in the same transaction. It's kind of like the last situation with the two buyers for the same property, but this is different. This is completely different because you got the seller side and the buyer side. And if I'm representing the seller and I find out anything about the buyer, I need to represent that seller and let them know exactly what's going on and vice versa. If I'm representing the buyer and I find out that the seller's going through a divorce or going through some type of health issues or whatever, then I need to let my buyer know that we might be able to get one. We might have it. So I'm not gonna be like that. I'm either with you or against you. And if that's the case, now I can conduct a transaction, but I'm not gonna put myself in a position where I'm the agent on both sides. I can conduct the action. I can conduct the transaction fairly and impartially, kind of, sort of, in a certain kind of way. But I'm always gonna be fair, and I'm even willing to negotiate my commission a little bit when it comes down to that to get a good deal for both sides. If somebody did decide to do both, then they just have to disclose it. But personally, I don't understand how you can do it. I wouldn't do it. And if you have an agent who says they want you to be there, that they want to do dual agency, I would recommend you get your own agent. Because how can you be loyal to both sides at the same time? And that's just me as an agent letting you know from a position of knowledge and understanding that you should have somebody to represent you from start to finish. Leasing or opting, cost of services, products obtained from outside sources. Anything that you do, whether it be surveys, soil tests, title, reports, inspections, that's your responsibility, not the agent's. Indemnification, non-discrimination. It is agreed that broker or buyer, parties to this agreement that are required by law, discrimination because of religion, race, color, national origins, age, sex, disability, familial status, marital status, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression by said parties with respect to the purchase of the desired property is prohibited. Local ordinances may offer protection against additional discrimination. So we don't discriminate. I've been discriminated enough to know I'm not going to discriminate against somebody else. I don't care who you are, what you did. If you're my client, you're my client, bottom line, and I'm going to work and do the best that I can to protect your interests and to get you the best deal as possible, whether you're a seller or a buyer. Counterparts. This agreement may be signed in any number of counterparts with the same effect as the signature of each counterpart were upon the same instrument. Electronic communications. Basically, the parties agree that this agreement, any amendment or modification of this agreement, and or any written notice or communication in connection with this agreement may be delivered by electronic mail via the contact information set forth above. That's the email address. Any such communication shall be deemed delivered at the time it is sent or transmitted. The parties agree that the electronic signatures and initials shall be deemed to be valid and binding upon the parties as if the original signatures or initials were present in the documents in the handwriting of each party. So your digital signature is the same thing as your actual wet signature. So just understand that. When an agent sends you something through the mail and says, hey, sign it, just click, you're legally obligated to what you signed via email. That's why when I say you go online and you go look up a house on Zillow or Trulia, or Realtor, or Redfin, and you get one of those agents, and you're required to sign a contract before you go see a house. So if you go see a house, you sign in a contract, whether you realize it or not. So if you do, you need to know what's in the contract, which is the reason why I'm actually going over this right now, so that you will know. It's the same thing. It's not just me. It's not just 3DX. It's everybody, any licensed agent, especially in Michigan. This is exactly what it is. So be careful. Don't just sign with anybody. Like I said, don't get anxious. You want to check with a few different people or know who you're using. Understand that you want somebody that's going to be knowledgeable, professional, that knows their stuff, and is not trying to take advantage of you. We're not supposed to take advantage of people, but it's just natural that people do try to look out for themselves. I personally been over backwards to make it easier for the client, but there are a lot of people sign with an agent and can't get out of the contract. And then when they realize that the agent is not exactly what they thought they were. When you look for an agent, don't look for a nice suit and a pretty car. Don't look for those things that don't matter. Get somebody that's going to care about you, about the outcome. Not somebody that's telling you, oh yeah, just offer as much as possible. Go over the list price. Go over the appraised value. That's going to put you in a bad situation. Don't even go to your max on your pre-approval as far as I'm concerned, because if the taxes go up, then you might be in a bad situation, because when you get the pre-approval, it has a limit on it, and it's based on the debt-to-income ratio, and that debt-to-income ratio doesn't take into consideration those things that you like to do. It only takes into consideration the things that you have to do. So any little offset to where you're going to be charged a little bit more on your payment is definitely going to impact your ability to make that monthly payment. And that's not what you want. Give yourself a little break. If you pre-approve for $300,000, try to keep it at $280,000. Just give yourself a little bit of breathing room. And then once you adjust, and if your taxes go up and you see that you're comfortable, then go from there. But by all means, take it easy with your pre-approval limit. Seriously. I care. So condition of the property is limitation, merger, cancellation. This agreement may be canceled or revoked only by the mutual consent of parties in writing. And that's why you have to be careful, because you might want to want a mutual release, but the agent might say, hey, look, I haven't done anything that I need to be released from this, and you signed this contract, and so if you buy a house, you got to buy it with me. That happens. I don't do it. I let them go, even to my detriment. I've let buyers go because I didn't want to be with somebody, working with somebody that didn't want to work with me. I let sellers go, and at the end of the day, when they sold their properties, I should have got paid, because there's nothing that I'm going to do to hinder you from selling your property. I'm actually going to help you. I'm going to help you get the house together if we need to. I fixed holes in walls. I've changed locks for people. I've had repair windows. I repair roofs. I've cut down trees. Everything that I do that to help my client. And it's not stuff that I always get paid extra for. I just do what I do to help you. So if you need me, reach out. My name is James White. I'm a real estate agent with 3DX Real Estate, and I'm here to help. 248-891-3876. And my website is https://jwhitepropertysale.com. Hope to hear from you soon. Have a blessed day.